our fourth workshop in 2 weeks. Okay, so for those of y'all who haven't seen this before, we did basically the same workshop in the fall where we just kind of had a fireside style chat about various things that we wish people had told us when we were underclassmen. Now we had some proposed topics from the Google form earlier, but we want this to be more like a free form discussion. So feel free to chime in, raise your hand, ask questions, anything you want. Before we get started, if all the panelists could introduce themselves.
What's up, guys? I'm Michael. I'm the VP. I've had 3 internships. My first one was with a small company that I cold called. My second one was through like a student, sort of like a student class. Like it's at UF. It's called Florida Community Innovation, or FCI. You get like a $500 stipend. You get like class credit for it. And it's like it was pretty fun. And then my last one this past summer was at JP Morgan Chase. And that's where I got my AWS cloud practitioner certification. And I'm returning this summer, or I guess it would be fall, as a full-time software engineer.
Oh, I guess everyone already knows Jonas. Hi, folks. My name is Blake. I am a senior software engineer at a startup called Mercury. They do banking support for startups, so things of that nature. Additionally, as some of you may know, I also teach a class here at UF for object-oriented programming. If you're in that class, I am so sorry. But anyways, better on the block a bit. So there you go.
Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Angel. I'm a fourth year computer science major here at UF. I'm the outreach officer for SSD. I had 2 internships. My first one was at a local cybersecurity company here in Gainesville, where I basically worked as a web developer. And then my second one was at Grafana Labs, which is a company that offers application performance monitoring tools and platforms for other developers. And yeah, I'm kind of like on the same boat as many of you. No new grad offers, but we're still on the grind. So doing pretty good.
And I'm Jonas. I make unhinged PowerPoints. Okay, but actually, I'm also a fourth-year computer science major here. First internship was at an educational tech company called GoGuardian. I did things like working on React UIs, Chrome extensions, and several backend services. And this past summer, I interned at Oracle. Also did a bit of front-end stuff and some backend stuff, and more so in the cloud space. And I'm going to be returning to Oracle this fall to work there full-time. Now, yeah, so got some expertise here. We've got 3 seniors and a senior engineer. So glad to get started. To kind of go through the topics that we kind of have lined up. So some people want us to talk about project ideas, finding your niche in CS, what subfield you're interested in. That's a good one. How to learn skills quickly, and any potential for non-software engineering jobs in CS. So they're really interesting, but I just got them talking for 30 minutes. So I'm curious if anyone in the audience wants to lead us off or start us off. Yeah, CJ. This is Baja Blast. Yeah, one of the best ones. Oh, yeah, man. Of course they have flavors. Zero sugar though, because I have to make somewhat good choices. Yeah. Mhm. Repeating just for the recording, what were the steps for cold calling a companies?
Yeah. So I'm from the Tampa Bay area. And I did this while I was at home over spring break. I literally went into Google Maps and typed in IT companies near me. I looked through the entire list of them, and I would just type the company into LinkedIn, and I would just like look like if it was big, small, like what was going on, look at their website and stuff like that. And I found a company near me in Clearwater called Metro Tech. And the CEO's email was just on the website. And like by CEO, I mean like this company is literally 6 people. Like this guy was like the founder, the runner, and also like did a bunch of the work in the company. And I was like, hey, I'm a second-year computer science major. I have these types of skills. Do you have any code projects that are ongoing? And he was like, yeah, like we had this old dashboard that stopped working. I have no idea why. Nobody knows how to code in this company. You want to come work on it? And I was like, yes. And that was literally it. So like Just I literally Google IT companies near me. That was how I did it.
So I actually didn't cold call. It was like an internship posting that they had. But if I were to cold call, the first thing I would probably do is look locally in Gainesville. And like one of the examples I can give of like good places to look might be the UF Innovate Hub, which I think, if I recall, is kind of like an incubator for like tech companies that are started by like UF alumni. And then they have a bunch of like employees here, and they have offices kind of like off of 6th Street area, like next to like the Opus. I would definitely like look into those companies. I know Satlantis is one that is pretty popular here. There's a couple of other ones. I think one is called like Feather. But if you look up like UF Innovate Hub on LinkedIn, there's going to be a couple of companies here that are like tech related or tech adjacent. And of course, I would do what Michael did essentially. If you're at your hometown for the summer, definitely like look at local IT companies nearby and like try to look for like places kind of like UF Innovate, which are like areas that are almost like incubators for like smaller companies that are related to tech. And then just go from there. Literally just find emails on LinkedIn, connect with people on LinkedIn, send some messages. You could have like a template for a specific like message that you want to send to a recruiter or an administrative person in the company, and just work off of that, kind of like the numbers game, like Jonas was talking. And eventually, from the few that you'll hear back, you'll either get a yes or a no. You can go from there.
Yes.
Applicants at the time, I think. Oh yeah. Sorry, that was saying I got my first internship through LinkedIn, and I pretty much followed the same strategy that Jonas was outlining in the previous workshop, where I literally just looked at like date posted. I would check every day software engineer intern positions posted in the last 24 hours. And I would just go one by one with like the Simplify Copilot extension, which I'm not sure if you guys have heard of it, but it's like a really good extension for autofilling resumes or like applications with like your resume. That takes a chunk of the time off like the application like process actually. Like only the specialized questions like what do you want to work here, those are the ones that you actually end up like typing in manually. But I basically did that until eventually I encountered the emerging tech, which was the local company, and then I interned there in the summer because I heard back from them, which was pretty nice.
Yeah. Any more questions on that? Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna partially attribute my internship and now full-time offer at JP Morgan to the career fair. So like, yes, you do need to apply online first. And that is like the first thing they ask you when you go to the career fair. Did you apply online? So like when it comes to the career fair, apply online first, show up with your physical copy of the resume as well, and just make like a good impression by talking about something cool that you've done. Like my go-to is like, what's your code review process like? And just like, something that shows that you actually know about enterprise software engineering. And they basically said like the way that they did it, they told me is like they go to like a restaurant after and they basically like have markings on each resume and they're like, oh, this guy was good. Like let's set him aside. And like they do have like a checkbox like in their system, like this guy showed up to the career fair. So yes, going to the career fair does matter. And for some smaller companies, like they will hire you on the spot at the career fair. Obviously, JP Morgan Chase has a much more, like much more steps in the process, so they can't do it right away. But yeah, going to the career fair is very important.
Just to kind of back up what Michael said about how the companies have a box that says, oh, this person was at the career fair. When I got recruited by Oracle, I had one of the recruiters reach out to me on LinkedIn, but that was after I gave them my resume at a career fair. So my info was in their system already. So it is possible, and probably not this late in a cycle, but just know for future years, if you hand a recruiter your resume at a career fair, they might actually follow up with you later. So
You can go to the career fair after you graduate as well. Like you can, if you don't have a full-time offer like next fall and you're graduating this semester, like you can go back. You can be like, I've already graduated. I'm looking for full-time roles. Like a lot of people do that. So just adding that.
And something. I got my internship through a company that I went to the career fair, sorted it pretty much from there. I knew some of the people involved in the hiring process at that company before the career fair. but it was definitely the career fair. There's a driving push for that. One thing that I did for a long time is I volunteered at the career fair as well, right? They take volunteers every semester. So I would go, I would, have an opportunity to talk with many of the companies before anyone even set foot into the room, right? When it was basically just like the one person there where they don't have other students they're worrying about, they don't have anything else going on. And so, that was a small benefit. And then, of course, they recognize you as volunteering, other stuff like that. In a room full of people with tuxedos, a bright orange volunteer shirt does wonders as well. So,
I myself personally haven't had much success in career fairs, but I can tell you from anecdotal experience, I was literally talking with one of my UCF friends today. Her name's like Jade Soto. She's like a junior software engineer now at L3 Harris. She got her job at L3 Harris because of the career fair, and she had applied like multiple times, like multiple cycles before for like internships. And it wasn't until she actually went to the career fair and pretty much got her name out the door that she was able to get like the interview offer and everything. And not only L3 Harris, she was able to get another like company at the UCF career fair, like an interview offer. So they really do help. This is more of like an anecdotal point, but what Michael was mentioning and what Blake mentioned is real. Like these places do matter and they boost your clout essentially for like the interview process. So definitely if you have the opportunity to show up to them and talk to some people, especially if there's companies that you like, 100% would recommend to show up and put in your part.
suppose the next question. Then. All right, to CJ again. Hi, CJ. Well, so there's a mix things there. The first thing is like an internship is meant for getting experience in the first place, right? I mean, if people were not trying to hire students that, didn't have internships before, they would be looking elsewhere. So you go to the internship, you go into, the interview and career fairs and whatever else looking for, positions that are a good match for you without any experience, and companies are looking for the exact same, right? They're looking largely for people who are a good culture fit, that have potential, that show interest in computer science, that they can effectively teach and grow effectively into, whatever would be a good employee match for that company. That's largely their objective. That's one of the many reasons why companies have, freshmen, computer science programs, and why people will do, multiple internships at the same company, right? It's not just about that internship, but it's also about, hey, we're effectively trying to train you to be the best employee that you could possibly be on day one. And that's in a large part the objective in that regard. I think there's probably more I could say, but I'll pass it to someone else.
Yeah, if you never go to the career fair when your quote unquote resume is not good enough, by the time your resume is good enough and you show up, you're gonna have no idea how to talk to a recruiter. And like the worst thing that you can do is shake their hand and say your name and major and then just go quiet, because they're just going to stare at you and be like, okay, what do you want from me? You have to tell them a little bit about yourself. You need to develop an elevator pitch. We have a professional development and resume / all that stuff on our YouTube, and we talk a little bit about elevator pitches in there. You need to be able to speak for yourself and talk about why you're a good computer science student at the very least. And if, bring it further, why you'd be a good employee, what type of projects you've worked on before and stuff like that. I had a second point, but I forgot it. So I'm just going to hand off.
Yeah, like they were saying, think of it as kind of a practice run, because you don't want to have no experience with talking to these recruiters when it really, really counts. And even then, you never know what could happen, because actually, there was another point I was going to make. Look out for underclassmen only internship programs, especially the big tech companies have them. Things like Google Step, UberStar, Microsoft Explorer. If you're a freshman right now, apply to those at the start of sophomore year. It's very early. I got burned because I didn't realize those were a thing until it was too late in the recruiting process sophomore year. But that can be a great opportunity to not only get a good internship, but it also chains into the higher level internships at big tech companies for your junior year. So be sure to apply to those, but be careful. Competition will be stiff for that as well.
So yeah, I'm sure at the career fair you've seen there's always like a couple big name companies with like the line that goes around the building 4 times and stuff like that. Like you don't need to go to those. Go to the small companies because you can still get experience talking to recruiters, and those small companies may hire you even though you in your mind lack the experience that you need to, become an actual or not become but secure an internship role. Because you 100% can, especially at smaller companies.
I'll add something on to Lee. I think we talked about the experience aspect as far as interviewing experience or, industry experience things. But maybe in a more along the nature of just general, experience writing code and programs and other stuff like that. Right. I mean, obviously, if you've gone through, 2 years, you're still probably finishing up data structures or something like that. Maybe, going into software engineering stuff. It definitely feels like a large gap away from being able to actually do an internship thing. So a couple of things is one in general, remember, even if you go through software engineering or more of the junior senior classes, that will not prepare you for an internship any better, right? I mean, that is just absolutely true. The second one is that there are other ways that you can try to build up programming experience if that's the piece you think that you're struggling with the most, right? It doesn't have to just be, crazy internship things. Internships may also not be the best way to get programming experience, right? Industry experience and programming experience are different things. If you have, an interest or a hobby in, computer science land, right? Game development or whatever else people want to do, then sometimes if you find something you're invested in to commit to, seeing that through, that project could be far more valuable as far as programming experience goes. Now, I'm not saying do that at the expense of an internship, but I'm saying if you're worried about the external, perception of, your lack of programming ability, then step one is, hey, let's, work on the programming ability and build up that confidence, right? So there's that.
Most of you are probably CS majors, so the name on your degree is computer science, not software engineering. There is a difference between the two. This degree will not teach you how to be a software engineer. It'll teach you how to be a computer scientist. The good news is that there's a big overlap between the two, especially when it comes to learning how to think and learning how to learn. So you have to do like a lot of self-exploration and actually learn those skills when it comes to software engineering yourself. Like you will never learn them in your degree, like in the 4 years that you're at UF.
Unless you attend SSD every Tuesday, 6:15 p.m. All right. Yes.
I'll jump on this one. I've known a couple of people who have done research side of things. First thing and foremost is that there are two general classes of jobs in the research area for things that you get into. One is we are outside of computer science and we need someone who can write Python scripts for us that, just barely work well enough to generate the graphs that we need to put into our actual research paper, right? Best case scenario is that you'll get paid basically minimum wage in order to write that. You will get to write the code from scratch. Probably not. It will probably be half written by someone who doesn't know anything about writing code, and you'll have to deal with that. And then, you're not going to have any type of like actual research or publishing or any experience, right? You might as well look at that as basically like just barely even an internship, but just kind of a data science-y job as type of thing. That's not to say that there can't be value for it, and that's not to say you can't make the most of it, but that is very different from what people tend to think of as far as like research positions go normally, right? You expect something where you're a little bit more involved in the actual research, and most of the times that isn't exactly the case, right? Okay, so the second one is if you can get into the research thing. Now, there are things in computer science, at least at UF, most of those types of research opportunities are around user experience stuff. They have a whole, UI UX type of lab that does a whole bunch of research things, and there are ways to kind of get into that. That is harder to get into, but it is definitely possible. At the same time, that is a bit of a different class of problems than software engineering, as has been discussed, right? The faculty members are computer science. They are researching computer science things. They are also tend to be a little bit of a far cry away from what you might expect, working on a standard project. So I would say is that, there is value in that, but the value is different than the value you might be trying to look for if you're gunning for like an internship or something else. right? Or like a full-time software engineering, software development position. That said, there is of course a value in a breadth of, different experience and knowledge and other things like that. But I would say step one is make it clear on like what your goals are and figure out like what that specific position they're actually looking for. And then you can start to reevaluate back from there. So that's obviously more of, informational stuff than any like strong advice on whether to do something or not. But that would be step one, because I think most people don't really understand what those types of research positions are like in practice.
It beats sitting on the couch. I'll say that much.
Yeah, Blake, I think is the only one on this panel who has like actually done research. So
I have not. So the person I'd point to is probably Steven, who has some things to say, because he actually started it. Yeah. All right, Steven, let's do this. So yeah, so Steven started a research in this semester working with one of the previous officers as well.
I will say Blake's right about you either will be working for some bioinformatics lab, or you'll be working where you're doing some code in R. It's very easy, or you'll be looking at like models that you don't understand. But experiencing that is honestly, especially as a freshman, is the biggest thing. Is like you got to know, oh, I hate data science, or oh, I love cybersecurity, or I like this, or I don't like this. And the only way you can do it, learn that, especially as like a freshman, is by just doing it. So like apply, and honestly, you'd work for free. Like getting a job or getting like a research position, just working under somebody and learning from them is usually more valuable, especially at a starting level.
Yes. Yeah, so when I was in like interview preparedness mode, I was doing like the daily leak code problem every day, and then like maybe one more if I was feeling adventurous. But like I wouldn't spend a whole lot of time on it, honestly. Like consistency is the key, and like obviously like Jonas was talking about like this method of like just trying to learn as much as possible, and that's like for crunch time. Obviously, if you have more time, just like focus on like learning your fundamentals, like learning approaches to problems, and I mean even he did talk about that in the lecture. But as far as behavioral interviews go, learn the Amazon STAR method, situation, task, action, result, reflection, and just like have some pre-made answers about, especially like related to CS projects. I would say most of them should be related to computer science. Like you can have a couple answers that are like, something about your personal life or like something you've experienced, but I'd say mostly tailor it towards computer science. Other interview prep, take, yeah, I would usually just go on Reddit and like type in company software engineer internship, like interview or something like that. And sometimes companies will send out like, look, review these things. Like I know JP Morgan Chase did, they were like reviewed this, and this. So yeah, I guess it does sort of depend on the company and how big it is. With a really small company, you might not find anything, honestly.
yeah, so I've got 2 points on there. One, like you said, it depends on a company. For example, Amazon has their leadership principles, which are like huge. And in my behavioral, well, when I interviewed with Amazon, it was like a combined technical behavioral. I didn't do great on the technical, but on the behavioral, I was really like hammering the leadership principles home. And I was like telling stories and trying to name drop them basically. And I got waitlisted initially and then got an offer with them and then rejected their offer. And then, but yeah, long story short, it works. The second point I want to make is that behavioral interviews become a lot less intimidating when you view it as a conversation and not an interrogation, right? So you have to realize that the other person you're talking to is someone else who is working in computer science, is probably passionate about it like you, but they know a lot more than you, which means it's a learning opportunity, right? Like you've probably heard before, interviews aren't just for you company to interview you, but for you to interview the company. So you can ask your interviewer, hey, what stack do you work on? What is your day-to-day work like? And then from there, try to see like what topics they're passionate about. And if you get them going, that is super good for you because they're going to feel more comfortable. They're going to, you'll be really interested in what they have to say. So there will be less pressure on you. There'll be less pressure on them. And it overall will just kind of make you feel more like someone who they want to spend their time with. And that's super important for jobs because, when you're picking your coworker, you got to spend 40 hours with them every week. So they're not going to hire someone they can't stand. So really try to frame it from the approach of, how do I turn this into a conversation about a topic I'm passionate about, which is tech, building software, and how you guys do it at your company. One thing you could also do, typically in most interviews I've seen, like get the name of your interviewer beforehand. You could like look up their LinkedIn and see what skills they have. I typically just like ask them, hey, what stack do you work on here? What tools have you worked with before? But to each their own.
Yeah, so I guess the thing to look at is it depends on what you're trying to prepare for, right? And what nature of kind of preparation. I think the core of your question was how much preparation do you do for a specific company, right? Compared to other companies, things like that. In my case, historically, it's basically been zero extra preparation, right? I don't change much of what I do for any company. There's a particular reason that I generally have not gone for FANG type companies and stuff. I absolutely despise leak code with a passion, and I'm terrible at it. Like I'm just absolutely terrible with it. I'm a terrible programmer, right? It's the software engineering, software development stuff that I do significantly better with. And that's just a different skill set. It also happens to much better match up to what they actually need in industry. So, you find the right company and that kind of helps out as well. And, the interview process is generally going to be structured differently depending on what the company is actually valuing and the amount of investment they're going for particular things. For the large tech companies, it's going to be that crazy weed out style technical interview because that's almost all that they have the time for. I mean, Google gets thousands of applicants per day, right? That they have to somehow sift through, right? So, that extent, some of it is going to be finding a good company match, right? That's, match for kind of your personality with things. And that's, a little easier said than done. But I would say like if you feel like you're over preparing for a specific company, then maybe go back to the drawing board and be like, is this a company that's worth my time doing this amount of preparation for? Like same way as cover letters, just a little bit later in the process. And is this something where if I manage to do so much preparation that I convince them that I'm what they're looking for, am I actually what they're looking for? Am I going to like it here? Am I not going to like it here because it's a miserable experience because I basically interviewed as someone who I'm not? Right? That goes more for the behavioral stuff than the technical interviews, but obviously you could convince someone you're a React expert when you're actually not, and then you end up doing front end development.
So in terms of technical interview, my workflow most closely aligns with Michael's. Just do the daily leak code. And typically what I do is that I look up the company on Glassdoor and I try to see, for example, if it's an established software engineering internship program that they've had over multiple years. Typically you'll see people commenting on Glassdoor, the difficulty and the nature of the question that they encountered during their interview, right? So it'll be something like a medium sliding window problem, right? And then based on that, you can kind of gauge what type of leak code problems you should go for training for your technical interview, right? On the behavioral side, I would say prioritize primarily what Jonas and Michael said. But one thing that I like to do, because I know that companies like to be glazed, right? Like the recruiter loves it when you glaze their company. Essentially, you have to research the company, you have to research their internship program. And more often than not, if it's like a mid-sized to larger company, they'll have like a dedicated resource section for their internship program, like what kind of values they teach, what kind of things are included, whether there's workshop, coding buddies, whatever, peer programming. And, when obviously don't try to like be like, oh, why do you want to work for the company? Workshops, peer programming, boom, boom. Like, don't mention like the bullet points on the website, but try to tie that into the reasoning of like, this is why I want to work at this company. I thought it was really cool. I saw what your program offers, and I think it's going to be really good for my own growth as a developer, and stuff like that, right? So definitely try to incorporate that whenever possible. If you really like the company, do a little bit of extra research, look at their engineering blog, maybe look at their internship program blog, which sometimes like I've seen companies have interns post on the blog about their experience working at that company, right? Kind of like name dropping those things and saying, oh yeah, I know about this. I read over it before this interview, right? Because I was interested in the company, really lets the recruiter know that, okay, this person's like proactive and actually cares about this company and is likely to like go through the entire process of if we give them an offer, they won't like decline us for somebody else, right?
One thing I can say, because I've been on a number of interview panels interviewing candidates and stuff, is that for an industry job, technical ability is going to matter much more than it would for an internship level. And that's just because of the amount of signal, right? By the time someone's been in industry for a few years, they have much more capabilities technically, they have much more product experience, so on and so forth. And so you can start looking into technical ability and other things like that and use that as a much more valuable signal. When you're working with more like internship type interviews or other things like that, the recruiter is going to have an expectation that hey, the experience here is going to be widely different, right? Some people have done an interview before, or an internship before. Some people haven't. There's going to be such a wide variety of things that it can be hard to make heads or tails out of that as like technical ability. And so the behavioral side of the interview is going to matter significantly more in that regard, right? And so that's one of the things where, as an interviewer, you're generally looking for two things. You're looking for a reason to say no, and you're looking for a reason to say yes, right? In general, you're going to find a whole mix of, for lack of a better term, general platitudes that are relatively the same for each candidate, right? I'm excited for new opportunities. I like working in this type of technology. I want to learn more about this, that, or the other. Those are all obviously great things. They're not a reason to say no, but they're also not really a reason to say yes either, right? What'll happen is we'll basically get like a weak yes, which is we will accept this person, but we don't really want to hire them per se. So you need to try to find what reason you can get someone to basically give a strong yes and say, hey, they said this thing, and that's something that like I would really want to have on my team, right? For experience, like maybe that's a technical experience thing, right? Or an area of things that you've worked in. Maybe it's your past experience with a group project or something else that you've done. Whatever it might be, that is the type of thing that you want to figure out and kind of emphasizing, the more behavioral type of stuff, right? So, figure out what you can do to get a recruiter to say like, yes, I want this person on my team, and then kind of go from there. Part of what, Jonas and Angel both allude to is oftentimes companies will basically say like, hey, here are, the people that are interviewing you, and they will literally send the LinkedIn for that person. By all means, take a look at it, right? Interviewers are generally intelligent enough to know that if you start rambling a bunch of stuff that was off their LinkedIn, and be like, oh yeah, like I love programming languages too, we're going to be like, nah, you're not that guy. You're not that guy. But you can talk in a direction for, different things that those people kind of value, right? You play the game against the interviewer, especially true when you're looking at more peer interviews or when you're like interviewing people with like the manager of the team you're joining or whatever else. Different companies will have different things. The smaller the company is, the more likely you'll be able to get with people much closer involved with that hiring process. CJ?
No, I just want to say kind of what he said, how people can kind of tell when they're faking it. There's a difference between asking the interview what they work on to see if you have any common ground versus pretending to care about like what they work on. Which for one, if you really don't care about their work on, then why are you applying to work with them? Because you're going to be doing the same job too. So in general, you're interviewing a company too. I guess this might not be as applicable goal because again, a lot of y'all don't have the luxury of choice at this point in the cycle, but just general advice, like moving forward, try to like have a genuine conversation with these people. You're going to be working with them every single day.
One thing I can say for that, and this is a thing that kind of just comes with experience, is that as you start interviewing and doing, more things, you will find out the things that you like and the things that you don't like. For instance, there are a number of things that I do not like about the company I no longer work at. Those are great things for me to kind of ask to try to get an understanding of a culture fit at whatever other companies that I'm interviewing, right? For me, one of the main pain points was code reviews. The code review process of going through, working with other developers to kind of get a PR, approved, address any kind of concerns that might be on there or like resolve questions that I have about, the work I'm doing. That type of process, digging into that is something that I like to do because that's information that I want to know to help me make the decision. It has kind of the side effect of, there's like hey, this person asked a number of questions in this area. You've talked about some of their experiences, right? It seems like, they care about this a lot. They want something in this direction, like, hey, that's a good reason why, if the things I'm looking for are the same as what that interviewer likes, then that's a reason like, hey, like, yes, I would like to have a person on my team that, cares about the code review process, wants things to be, fast and improve there, tries to give, helpful feedback, resolve things quickly, yada, yada, yada. So that would be kind of the other piece I'd say.
Yeah, it's 7:30, so I guess we'll take one last question, hopefully a short one, if anyone has one. Yeah. I would say both. So advantage of like right now this summer is you will have time to learn a new skill and like apply that skill using the project. And for some people, like just working hands-on is the best way to learn for them. Now it might not be the best code quality at first, but you're a student, you're learning. Try to find topics that you're interested in. One thing I always say is just some basic web development is good. While it's kind of oversaturated at this point, it's also by far the field that has like the most openings, and it's going to be the most common when you're looking for an internship. I also feel that just no matter what kind of development you do, everyone should know a little bit of basic front end because it's the most universal and fastest way to get a basic UI up. So try to pick something you want to learn. If nothing else, learn some basic web development, maybe some front end and back end. Um, and try to build out a project. You can also like build out a project in the tool that you already know. I'm assuming you know some Python and C++ from your classes. And use those as like starting as jumping off points. C++ is good if you like want to build certain games without engines. Python is good for any kind of data science, backend, desktop apps, lots of stuff. You can do lots of stuff with Python. Yeah. So boils down to like what we were saying earlier, work with others, especially those who are more experienced than you, and you can learn a lot. Really, if anything, I'd say that probably would help me if I started doing that even sooner. Like just finding a more experienced friend and working with them on a project because you can pick up a lot of good habits by doing that.
All right, I have a strong opinion here. So first, internships are another question, right? So there. But as far as building up experience and other things like that goes, what I would say is just general advice for any type of learning computer science thing is that you need to find a problem. Computer science is not a solution. It is a means to the end, right? Like the way that you go about things is using computer science. It is not, the end all be all. And so you need to try to find a problem or something like that that you're interested in, right? Whatever that may be, right? Maybe it's AI stuff, right? Maybe it's machine learning stuff. Maybe it's weird data science things. Maybe it's game development. Maybe it's just some random problem that you ran into or something. And so you need to find something to give you kind of motivation to carry something through, right? And the most important thing that you can do with a project is to try to finish it. Like, the majority of the problems occur, what is it? It's like the first 90% of the project takes 90% of the time, and the other 90% of the time is the other, 90% of the project. So it's something like that, but I butchered it. The point being is that you won't run into, very many issues until you start trying to actually finish the project and wrap it all up. And that's where all the things that you've done previously start kind of falling apart a little bit. And that's when you have to go back through, figure out what you did wrong, and then fix what you did wrong. And so the majority of the learning process occurs at that point, not at the point of actually building a project. Too many people start things and then don't really finish them. There is a difference between effectively starting something and then having a long running project that just kind of keeps getting worked on, and starting something and not finishing it, right? Like set a goal that can be a very reasonable goal. It can be a couple of days development. It could be a couple of weeks development, whatever you want. But set a goal and see through that goal so that you actually complete whatever problem that you're trying to solve.
Not gonna lie, I was gonna say like literally something in the same vein as Blake. Just find something that you're interested in and like ask yourself, is this a problem that I can solve in programming, like with the stuff that I've gained through computer science or by learning new things, whether it be through YouTube or Medium or anything. And just work on it over the summer and set that goal. And I think working on something that you're super interested about or that you care about, for me, it's like video games. And for me, it was like I was really interested in making a personal website the first time I did it. And that was what caused me to like really lock in and actually like spend days every single day coding like straight. Just find something that you're super interested about, set reasonable goals, and just learn whatever you need to learn, whatever programming language tool that you want to use for the job, and build the project. And that's pretty much for me. I'm like a hands-on learner, so that's the best way for me to learn a programming language. But for other people, it might be like, like reading the documentation, seeing examples, watching a bunch of YouTube videos and like coding along. And then eventually you're going to get like enough of a confidence level with the language and an understanding of the tools that you're going to be able to build your own project. So whatever works for you, but baseline is find something that you're interested in, find a problem that you can solve using programming, and then literally put your all into like building that solution for that problem.
I should build on that quickly. It can be hard to like understand what's reasonable. That can be a difficult thing. So like feel free to ask people for, help, feedback on like, where to go with stuff. One of the things that I have a terrible track record with is thinking that things are outside of my ability when they're actually not. And I require often some type of external push or effort for me to go and do something, right? It was that way for me to even get into computer science. It was that way for me to kind of start building Minecraft plugins, right? It was that way for me to finally do some web development stuff, right? Like over and over and over again. And so, a little bit of external pressure can help if you have a friend who's kind of going through the same type of things. That doesn't have to be you work on the same thing, but it's, you coordinate with people to kind of get that type of thing done. Just kind of like hackathons and other stuff like that.
Just like just general advice, I would say learn a front-end framework, learn how to build an API in at least one programming language, learn how to do very simple machine learning tactics on like a free data set off of Kaggle. And there was one other one, but I forgot. So those three are a good place to start. Machine learning.
Yeah,
Technical communication. Your ability to succeed in industry and life is largely guided by your communication skills. The better you are at communicating things clearly and concisely, the better you will perform. That is largely your speaking ability. Second to that is your writing ability. Only after that comes everything else.
I will say leak code just because it takes so much time out of your hands having to do like daily leak codes. If you can like just literally see a problem and solve it, you'd have so much time to focus on like all the other things. Like if I had something, I mean, it's not super difficult. Like if you really like take the time to do the daily leak codes and like actually like learn data structures, right? It kind of comes about like as part of you like doing those leak codes and like taking data structures and algorithms, right? Like but like personally for me, that would have been the thing that I would have liked the most because I end up like doing projects on my own and like coding on my own. So like in terms of like having projects and like, like being able to talk technically about those projects, like it just kind of comes naturally with like liking to code and doing it outside of like school or work and stuff. So.
I passed it because I was a bit torn. I would say either like basic front end skills, just so I could hit the ground running with projects and have presentable UIs, or software design, just because knowing software design makes it easier to learn everything else. Basically, like learning React doesn't make as much sense when you know absolutely nothing about functional programming, which a lot of it was based on. And yeah, so with that, we're at 7:40, so I'm gonna officially call the meeting here. You guys can feel free to stick around, hang out, talk with us for a few minutes, but I need to stop the recording so it can convert because Zoom. A couple of announcements. This was our fourth event in 2 weeks, and we're gonna have our fifth tomorrow because we're having a movie night with SEC. Blake is hosting it in his classroom, so thank you, Blake. Okay, it's not during his class, but it actually is in his classroom after his class. So tomorrow in E121, I don't know, I don't know. Max was here a few minutes ago, but he left, so you'll have to ask him. Next week's meeting, we actually have a homework assignment. You need to go out, find some grass, and then touch it. So, yeah, happy spring break, guys. And then March 19th, some kind of mystery workshop. We'll probably go to like the social afterwards. Maybe get some food, play pool there. It'll be a good time. So, yeah, thanks for coming out. Let me stop the share. And where's my recording?